I'm Brad Rimbey. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I live in Chassahowiska. And a lady was sitting next to me. Where is Chassahowiska? And you can actually buy a T-shirt that says, "Where the hell is Chassahowiska?" Luckily, that's one of the reasons why I moved there, because it's a very small community, but it is a first magnitude spring system, and I love springs, obviously. So we had a battle going on with, and this will be a little bit redundant for people that were here yesterday, talking about this MFL thing with respect to the computer modeling that Swiftwood employs or misemploys. So the report was released for Chassahowiska in April 2010. Swiftwood released the minimum flows and levels report for Chassahowiska in 2010. I didn't see it until, I think maybe September. I was actually called while I was hiking in the mountains of Colorado, and a friend said, "Have you seen the minimum flows and level report?" And I had not. So I read it on the plane coming back, and I couldn't believe it. Their proposal was to take 11% of the natural flow away from the river. That got my attention. And then they also concluded that they had only taken about 1% so far. So over the last 100 years of mechanical pumping in our spring shed, they think that they've only taken 1% and they want to take 11. And if you've ever been on the Chassahowiska, a very shallow river, and it's obvious to anybody that's been here long enough that it is starving for fresh water already. So Swiftwood also released the report for Homosassa, saying they could take 5% away from the natural flow, and they only taken 1.1% from them. None of this really made any sense to me, because Chassahowiska and Homosassa are right next to each other, and they're interconnected with springs. So I got with the Homosassa River Alliance, because they're a much bigger organization. We were calling ourselves the Chassahowiska River Restoration Committee, which was basically me, my next door neighbor, and Ben Brower with Sierra. But Swiftwood said they prefer to deal with groups, so that we use that name. So then in 2010, Swiftwood revised their MFL reports. We had insisted that they need to consider what sea level rise is going to do to these coastal rivers over the next 20 years, and that 20 years is their planning horizon. I don't know if they think they're working on a Mayan calendar and the world's going to come to an end in 20 years. Maybe these rivers will hopefully be around longer than that, but that's what they use. So when they did that, they dropped it. Chas MFL recommendation down to 9% reduction and 3% for Homosassa. And when I was reading the report, I already knew that both Chas and Homosassa, we just call Chassahowiska Chas, had been designated as outstanding Florida waters in January 5th of 1993. And from that point further, the waters are not to be degraded, and that's already been talked about. So, I started asking them questions about that, because when you reduce freshwater flow in a coastal river, you're turning fresh water into salt water. It flows in farther, and our trees are dying on the edge of the wildlife refuge. Swiftwood puts all that onto sea level rise, and I'm sure that's part of the equation. I have friends that live in cabins down there, and they're wet almost all the time now, and sometimes they would get dry. But the other part is loss of freshwater flush. The seawater comes in and it stays there, and it's killing the trees. I'm going to read what the wording is of outstanding Florida waters. It shall be the Department Policy, that's DEP, to afford the highest protection to outstanding Florida waters. It goes on to say, no degradation of water quality other than that allowed under subsection 62, blah, blah, blah. Is to be permitted on outstanding waters. The exceptions are like in emergency situations or something like that. It doesn't give them the right to permanently degrade an outstanding Florida water. Smith says, well, that doesn't really apply to MFLs. And it's like, well, why not? I don't see an exception in there, except when they're sucking water out of your spring shed and turning the freshwater environment into salt water. So on it goes. We ultimately got to the point where the 3% and 9% reductions are what staff took to the governing board. And so I prepared this slide because I wanted to talk to the governing board, and I handed out these two pictures to the governing board, to each one of them to have something to look at while we were talking. And they're obviously not, the old one, the 1971, is obviously not good quality, but it's the best one anyone has ever seen in color, showing what that spring looked like around 1970. And I don't know who the photographer was. I'm pretty sure it was a Polaroid. The guy just threw it down on the picnic table there and been discussed when he saw what the spring looks like in 2012. By the way, we had a restoration project where they sucked tons of muck out of the main spring there, and they did that a couple years ago. It looks exactly like this, and it did nothing to improve the aesthetics of that spring. I don't think it did anything to improve the water quality, although that's what they say. 200 people came to the governing board meeting. We actually got one of the governing board's members almost in tears. Jennifer Closhi was choking up when she had to talk later. The only two people out of the 200 that I can remember that were in favor of it was one ag guy and one well driller. He was good at taking one more. So the governing board listened to all of our complaining, and you can't do this and whatnot. So they broke and chatted and came back and just dumped staff's recommendation for the 9% flow reduction for Chaz, which makes perfect sense to me. We didn't want them to take any more, and they left Homosassa at 3%. So the bottom line is, when we speak as a group, people listen. By the way, I'm the vice president of the Florida Springs Council. I just got drafted a couple of weeks ago to that position. I'm very much in favor of what the Springs Council is about, because we really have numbers now, and they're going to listen.